Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The camera focuses on Nathaniel's thoughtful expression, hinting at what is to come. Stay tuned for part 2. It was a few days later when Emma found herself back at the same coffee shop, but this time, she wasn't here for a blind date. She was here for a quick break before heading to her second job, exhausted from another long shift. The shop was quiet in the early afternoon, with only a handful of customers chatting softly and the barista humming a tune behind the counter. She walked in, her tired eyes scanning the room, and then she froze. There he was again, Nathaniel. He was sitting at the same corner table, his eyes focused on his laptop, his suit perfectly pressed as always. She felt the familiar rush of embarrassment wash over her, remembering the awkwardness from their last meeting. She wasn't sure why, but she found herself walking toward him anyway. As she approached, he looked up, and this time, their eyes met with a hint of recognition. "Emma," he said, his voice calm but warm. "Hi, Nathaniel," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, despite the sudden nervous flutter in her chest. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I didn't expect to see you here." Nathaniel smiled faintly, closing his laptop. "I come here often. It's one of the few places I can actually relax." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Relax? In a coffee shop? With that look on your face, I wouldn't be surprised if people mistook you for the owner." Nathaniel chuckled, but it wasn't the usual light-hearted laugh. It was something quieter, more genuine. "You'd be surprised," he said, glancing around the cafe before meeting her eyes again. "So, what brings you back here?" "Just needed a break," Emma replied, shrugging off her jacket and taking a seat across from him. She didn't know why she was here, really. She wasn't sure if she felt more drawn to him because of the intrigue he carried or because of how uncomfortable the situation had been the last time they met. "You seem like the type of person who doesn't need a break," she added with a smile. Nathaniel's expression softened, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee, his eyes lingering on her for just a second longer than necessary. "I don't really know how to take a break," he said, almost to himself. There was a pause, a brief moment of silence that made Emma wonder if she had said something wrong. But then Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed, as if the conversation had shifted to a more comfortable place. "But you know," he continued, "I think I'm starting to learn that sometimes, the smallest moments of peace are the ones that matter the most." Emma stared at him, trying to read between the lines. There was something about him, something more than just the CEO persona he wore like a shield. Something real, something vulnerable, hiding beneath the surface. Before she could say anything, a voice interrupted them. "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but can I get you anything else?" the barista asked. Nathaniel turned his attention to the barista and shook his head. "No, we're good. Thanks." Emma didn't know why, but she felt a little disappointed when the barista walked away. It was as if the moment they had shared had slipped away, replaced by the noise of the cafe once again. But Nathaniel's voice brought her back. "I know this is a bit awkward," he said, breaking the silence, "but I wanted to say. I'm sorry about how things went last time. I should have corrected you when you thought I was someone else." Emma blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected him to bring it up. "You don't need to apologize for that," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It was my fault. I should have double-checked. I was just embarrassed, honestly." Nathaniel looked at her for a moment, as if considering something. Then, with a small sigh, he pushed his laptop aside and leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "I want to be honest with you, Emma. I didn't correct you because I didn't want to break the moment. But I should have. Emma tilted her head, confusion crossing her features. What do you mean? Nathaniel hesitated, the weight of his words heavy in the air between them. I'm not just Kevin from a blind date, Emma, he said quietly. I'm Nathaniel Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. The last thing I wanted was for you to think of me as just another businessman. I wanted you to see me for who I really am, not just the label I carry. Emma's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't speak for a moment, the weight of his confession settling in. Nathaniel Blackwood, the CEO of one of the most successful tech companies in the world, was sitting across from her. And he had just admitted that he wanted her to see him, not for his wealth, not for his success, but for something more. But what did that even mean? Nathaniel waited for her response, his gaze intense but not demanding. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing as she tried to process the truth of what he had just revealed. It wasn't that she cared about his wealth, it was the fact that he had chosen to hide it from her, to let her see him as a person first. That was what threw her off. Why didn't you just tell me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I guess I wanted to see if you would still like me without the title, without the reputation. If you would still want to get to know the real me. Emma stared at him, her heart beating faster than she expected. She didn't know what to say, how to react to the confession, to the rawness of his words. But one thing was certain, this was no longer just a casual coffee meeting. Something had changed. Something had shifted between them. And Emma couldn't deny it. She was intrigued. She was drawn to him in a way she didn't understand. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something entirely new. Emma sat back in her chair, still processing Nathaniel's words. She hadn't expected this, didn't even know how to respond. There was something about the way he said it, so matter-of-fact, yet so vulnerable. She had spent her entire life around people who hid behind masks, and yet here was Nathaniel, a man who had everything, willing to lay his truth bare in front of her. For a moment, there was a silence between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Emma couldn't help but study him. She had never imagined that someone like him, someone so successful, so wealthy, would care enough to hide his identity, to want her to see him for who he truly was. I don't know what to say, Emma finally managed to whisper, her voice catching in her throat. You didn't have to do that, you know? Nathaniel smiled softly, the faintest hint of relief in his expression. I wanted to, he said quietly. I wanted to know if you would still see me the same way, even without the title, the money, the fame. I know it sounds crazy, but I thought, maybe if I kept that part hidden, I could find someone who would care about me for who I am, not just what I have. Emma blinked, the weight of his words settling deep within her. But why me? She asked. Why choose me to hide all of that from? Nathaniel looked away, his gaze shifting to the window, watching the rain fall gently against the glass. I don't know, he said after a long pause, his voice barely a whisper. Maybe because you're different. You don't see the world through the same lens as everyone else. You don't look at me like I'm a business deal or a walking paycheck. You saw me when I wasn't pretending to be anything. His words hit her harder than she expected. She had always prided herself on seeing people for who they truly were, not their wealth or status, but to hear him say she was different made something shift inside her. She wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like a door was slowly opening, one she didn't know existed. I still don't know what to say, Emma admitted, her heart racing as she met his gaze. But I think I understand why you did it. Nathaniel turned to look at her, his eyes full of curiosity, waiting for her to continue. You were just trying to protect yourself, she said softly. Protect yourself from people who only care about what they can get from you. Nathaniel nodded slowly, his expression softening. Exactly, he said, his voice a little quieter. I've had to be so careful my whole life. It's hard to know who's real and who's just after something. But with you, I don't feel like I need to be anyone else. I can just be me. The sincerity in his voice struck Emma like a chord. For the first time, she realized that Nathaniel wasn't just another rich CEO with a cold heart. He was a man who had been hiding, just like so many others, waiting for someone to truly see him. And maybe, just maybe, she was the person who could do that. But she wasn't sure what that meant for them yet. She wasn't sure what to do with all of this new information. The silence between them stretched on for a few moments before Emma spoke again, her voice uncertain. "So, what happens now?" Nathaniel hesitated, his eyes searching hers as if looking for some sign of what to do next. "I don't know," he said, his voice a little rough. "But I'd like to find out. I'd like to see where this goes, if you're open to it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to say that. It was all so sudden, so raw. But something inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time, told her to trust it. She wasn't sure if this was the start of something real, or if it was just another twist in the long line of her life's unexpected turns. But there was something about Nathaniel's honesty, about the way he looked at her like he wasn't just seeing her as a waitress, but as someone worth getting to know, that made her want to take the risk. "I'm open to it," Emma finally said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Nathaniel's eyes lit up, a smile slowly spreading across his face. For the first time, Emma saw him not as the cold, distant billionaire, but as someone real, someone who wanted to be seen. He reached across the table, his hand hovering for a moment before he gently took hers. "Then let's take it one step at a time," he said softly. The simple touch of his hand sent a warm sensation through her, and she realized, in that moment, that they were both stepping into unknown territory. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, they were willing to find out together. It had been a week since that conversation at the coffee shop, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that things between her and Nathaniel were moving too fast. Yet, every time she saw him, it felt like everything was falling into place. He was different than the man she had imagined, the aloof billionaire hiding behind his wealth. There was warmth in him, a tenderness he'd only revealed to her, and with each passing day, she found herself drawn to him more and more. But as much as she tried to ignore it, the truth was undeniable: she was falling for him. Nathaniel had made it clear that he wanted to take things slow, and for once, Emma wasn't rushing either. She wanted to savor each moment, to let things unfold naturally, without any pressure. That afternoon, as she finished her shift at the cafe, she received a text from Nathaniel. "Meet me at the gallery tonight. I have something special planned." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't been to a gallery in ages. Nathaniel had mentioned before that he had an art collection, but she had never seen it. She wasn't sure what to expect, but her curiosity got the better of her. When she arrived at the gallery that evening, she was taken aback by how beautiful the space was. The lights were dim, casting a soft glow over the walls, and the artworks displayed were nothing short of breathtaking. But what struck her the most was how everything felt personal. The paintings weren't just pieces of art, they told stories of love, loss, and the kind of beauty that could only be captured by someone who had lived through it all. As she wandered deeper into the gallery, she found herself standing in front of a painting that immediately caught her eye. It was a portrait of a woman, her face partially turned away, her expression both serene and melancholic. The brushstrokes were soft, yet there was such depth to the painting that Emma felt as though she could step right into it. She didn't realize she had been staring at it for so long until Nathaniel's voice interrupted her thoughts. "That one's my favorite," he said softly, standing beside her. Emma turned to him, a little startled by how close he was, but the warmth in his eyes eased her nerves. "It's beautiful," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a reflection of how I see life," Nathaniel said, his gaze never leaving the painting. "Sometimes, we're all just like that woman looking away, lost in our own thoughts. But there's beauty in that, too." Emma nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. There was something so profound about the way Nathaniel saw the world, something that she had never truly understood until now. She had always been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, but here he was, showing her a different way to look at life. She didn't know it then, but something had shifted inside her. She was starting to see the world through his eyes. As they walked further into the gallery, Nathaniel led her to another painting. This one was a landscape, a vibrant scene of rolling hills and a sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. It was breathtaking, but it was also familiar. "This one reminds me of you," Nathaniel said, his voice low and thoughtful. Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised by his words. "Me?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "How so?" Nathaniel smiled, his expression softening. "There's something about the way the light hits the landscape. It's warm, inviting, yet mysterious. It's like it's hiding something, but in a beautiful way. I think you have that same quality. There's a warmth in you, Emma, but there's also a mystery, a depth that I haven't fully uncovered yet." Emma felt a blush rise in her cheeks. She wasn't sure what to say to that. "I'm not that mysterious," she said with a small laugh, trying to brush off the compliment. But Nathaniel's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, you are. And that's what makes you so interesting." The tension in the air shifted, and for a moment Emma found herself standing in front of him, her heart racing. She wanted to say anything that could make this moment feel less charged. But before she could speak, Nathaniel reached out and gently touched her hand. His touch was warm, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I know I'm not the easiest person to understand, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His words, so simple yet so powerful, made Emma's heart swell with emotion. She didn't know where this was going, didn't know if it was too soon to let herself feel this way, but in that moment, with his hand in hers, everything felt right. She took a deep breath, her voice steady as she finally spoke. "I'm glad I came too." Nathaniel smiled, the warmth in his eyes undeniable. And in that smile, Emma realized something she hadn't fully understood until now. This wasn't just a story about a rich man and a waitress. It was about two people finding each other in the most unexpected of places. It was about taking chances, embracing vulnerability, and discovering that sometimes, the greatest love stories are the ones that happen when you least expect them. As the days passed, Emma found herself growing more comfortable with Nathaniel. Their connection deepened, and with each moment spent together, the walls she had built around herself seemed to crumble. She had always been cautious, keeping people at arm's length, afraid of getting hurt, but Nathaniel was different. He didn't rush her, didn't push her to open up. He simply let her be, letting their relationship unfold naturally. They spent evenings together at cozy restaurants, wandering through art galleries, and sometimes, just sitting in silence, sharing the peace that came from being in each other's company. The more she learned about him, the more Emma realized how much he had been hiding. Nathaniel's past wasn't easy. His family had never understood his need for solitude, for the quiet moments he craved. As a child, he was always expected to live up to a standard that no one had ever asked of his siblings. His mother had always been distant, his father's expectations felt like a weight on his shoulders. But it wasn't until he met Emma that he realized what it truly meant to be seen for who he was, not for what he could do or the title he carried. One evening, as they walked through the park near her apartment, Nathaniel took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Emma turned to him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "About what?" she asked, curious. Nathaniel paused for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "About us," he said. "About what this is. About where we're headed." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to bring this up so soon. She felt a sudden rush of uncertainty, unsure of what to say. "Nathaniel, she began, but he gently placed a finger to her lips, silencing her. "Emma, I don't want you to feel pressured. I want you to know how much this means to me. I don't want to hide behind anything anymore. I want you to see me, all of me, without the walls. I've spent so much of my life hiding parts of who I am, and I think it's time to stop." Emma looked up at him, her heart full of emotions she hadn't quite figured out yet. She hadn't realized how much she had longed for someone to say those words to her. How much she had needed someone who could look at her and not see the waitress, but see her Emma. The woman she was, with all her flaws, dreams, and fears. You don't have to hide from me, Nathaniel, she said softly. I see you. I see the real you. You don't have to prove anything. Nathaniel smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, and for the first time, Emma felt as though they were on the same page. For the first time, she felt like they weren't just two people trying to figure each other out, they were two souls finding their way towards something real. The next few days were filled with small, beautiful moments. They took a trip to the countryside, where they spent hours walking through fields of wildflowers, laughing together in the warmth of the sun. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations easy and unhurried. Emma started to see the world differently through Nathaniel's eyes. The things that once seemed so important, like her struggles with money, her job, the insecurities she'd carried for years, didn't feel so heavy anymore. Nathaniel never judged her for where she came from. He accepted her, flaws and all, and made her realize that she was enough, just as she was. But it wasn't just about Nathaniel. It was about her, too. Emma realized that she had been hiding from herself all along. She had built walls to protect herself from hurt, but in doing so, she had kept herself from fully living. She had kept herself from embracing the love and connection that she now felt with Nathaniel. It was on a quiet evening, just a few weeks after their trip, when Nathaniel took her to the rooftop of his penthouse. The city lights twinkled beneath them, and the night air was crisp, the stars above them shining brightly. They stood there in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Nathaniel turned to her, his expression serious. Emma, I know this is fast, but I can't imagine my life without you. You've changed everything for me, and I know I don't want to wait anymore. Emma's heart raced as she looked at him, unsure of where this was going. Before she could say anything, Nathaniel took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. I know I haven't always been the easiest person to understand. I've been hiding behind my work, behind my name. But with you, I can finally be myself. I can finally be the man I've always wanted to be. And I want you to be part of that. Will you marry me, Emma? The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Emma felt a rush of emotions, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never expected this moment to come so soon, but as she looked at Nathaniel, she realized that she had never been more sure of anything in her life. Yes, she whispered, her voice full of emotion. Yes, Nathaniel. I'll marry you. Nathaniel smiled, his eyes lighting up with joy as he pulled her into his arms. It felt like the world had fallen into place, like everything that had happened had led them to this moment. And as they stood there, surrounded by the lights of the city and the quiet hum of the night, Emma knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with love, honesty, and the kind of connection she had always dreamed of. The days following their engagement felt like a dream to Emma. She had always imagined a different life for herself, one that was filled with quiet moments, simple joys, and a sense of security. But now, with Nathaniel by her side, she found herself in a world she had never thought possibly, a world of luxury, opportunity, and love that was unlike anything she had ever known. They spent the next few weeks planning their future together. Nathaniel insisted on making everything perfect, wanting to give Emma the life he felt she deserved. Yet, through it all, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was living in a fairy tale, one that felt too good to be true. It wasn't that she doubted Nathaniel, no, she trusted him completely. It was the world around them that seemed so unfamiliar, so out of reach. The penthouse, the lavish parties, the constant media attention, it all felt so far from her humble beginnings. But Nathaniel always reassured her, reminding her that their love was what truly mattered. One evening, as they sat in Nathaniel's penthouse, looking out at the city skyline, Emma couldn't help but voice her concerns. Nathaniel, are you sure you want this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean, I've never lived a life like this. It's all so overwhelming. I don't want you to feel like you're doing this just to make me happy. Nathaniel turned to her, his expression soft but resolute. Emma, I'm doing this because I want to. I've spent my whole life building my empire, but none of it means anything if I don't have someone to share it with. You're the one I want, and that's never going to change. It doesn't matter where we live, how much money we have, or who's watching us. What matters is that we're together, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Emma felt a lump form in her throat, the weight of his words sinking in. She knew he was right. She had always been afraid of change, afraid of losing herself in someone else's world. But Nathaniel had shown her that she didn't have to lose who she was in order to be loved. She could still be Emma, the woman who dreamed big, who cared deeply, and who had the courage to take risks. "I love you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Nathaniel smiled, a smile that filled the room with warmth. "I love you too, Emma. And I always will." Their relationship was far from perfect. No relationship ever was. They had their disagreements, their moments of doubt, but through it all, they learned to communicate, to trust each other, and to face their challenges together. Nathaniel had shown her what it meant to love and be loved, not just for what they could offer each other, but for who they truly were. And Emma had shown Nathaniel that love wasn't just about grand gestures and lavish gifts, it was about the small, everyday moments that made life meaningful. As the months passed, Emma found herself stepping into a new chapter of her life. She was no longer just the waitress with big dreams, she was Nathaniel's fiancée, a woman with a future that was filled with promise. But even as she embraced the life she had always dreamed of, she never forgot where she came from. Her roots were still there, deep within her, and she carried them with her every day. It wasn't long before they decided to take a trip to the small town where Emma had grown up. Nathaniel had never seen the place, and Emma wanted to show him the world she had come from, the people who had shaped her into who she was. As they drove into the town, Emma felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. The streets were quiet, the small houses lined up along the road with their gardens and picket fences. It wasn't much, but it was home. They stopped at the diner where Emma had worked all those years, the place where she had first learned the value of hard work and the importance of community. The owner, a kind woman named Ruth, recognized Emma immediately and greeted them with a warm smile. "Well, if it isn't my favorite waitress," Ruth said, pulling Emma into a hug. "It's so good to see you, honey, and who's this handsome man you've brought with you?" Emma smiled and introduced Nathaniel, who shook Ruth's hand politely. He had been nervous about meeting Emma's old friends and family, unsure of how they would react to him. But Ruth immediately put him at ease with her warmth and kindness. As they sat down to eat, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. Here, in this small town, surrounded by the people who had always supported her, she realized something important. It didn't matter how much money Nathaniel had, or how many fancy places they went. What mattered was the love they shared, the way they made each other feel. She didn't need the luxuries or the fame to know that she was exactly where she was meant to be. That night, as they drove back to the city, Emma looked at Nathaniel and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for showing me that love is about more than just what we have. It's about who we are, together." Nathaniel squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with affection. "You've always known that, Emma. I'm just glad we found each other." And with that, Emma knew that their love story was just beginning. A story built on trust, on understanding, and on the simple truth that sometimes, the greatest love comes from the most unexpected places. As the weeks passed after their visit to Emma's hometown, life seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm. Nathaniel and Emma had found a beautiful balance between their two worlds, one filled with high society events, dinners in elegant restaurants, and the other grounded in simple moments of quiet togetherness. Their connection was stronger than ever, and with every passing day, Emma felt more at home in Nathaniel's world. It wasn't always easy, though. There were moments of doubt, especially when it came to the life she had left behind. The pressure of living in Nathaniel's world, with its expectations and constant spotlight, sometimes weighed on her. She wasn't used to all the attention, the whispers and stares from people who seemed to treat her differently now that she was engaged to a billionaire. But Nathaniel was always there to remind her of who she was, off the woman he fell in love with, the woman who was strong, kind, and real. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Nathaniel's penthouse, the city lights sparkling below them, Emma found herself lost in thought. She had just returned from a high-profile charity event with Nathaniel, feeling out of place among the celebrities and socialites. Nathaniel, she said softly, breaking the silence. I've been thinking about everything. About us. He turned to her, his expression attentive, sensing the change in her tone. What's on your mind? He asked, his voice gentle. Emma hesitated for a moment before speaking again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can keep up with this. The parties, the people, the constant attention. It feels so foreign to me. Nathaniel's brow furrowed in concern as he took her hand in his thumb gently brushing over her skin. You don't have to keep up with anything, Emma. This is your life, too, not just mine. You don't have to be anyone you're not. You're already more than enough. His words, so simple yet so powerful, comforted her. She knew he meant it, but it didn't stop the feelings of insecurity from creeping in. She had always been the girl who worked hard for everything she had, and now, here she was, surrounded by wealth and status that she had never sought out. But I don't want to disappoint you, Emma admitted, her eyes searching his for reassurance. Nathaniel smiled, a smile that made her heart flutter. You could never disappoint me, Emma. I love you for exactly who you are. The woman who made me believe in love again, the woman who doesn't care about all the money or fame, but who cares about what really matters. And that's enough for me. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, and she quickly blinked them away, not wanting him to see how vulnerable she felt. But Nathaniel saw. He always did. He gently cupped her face in his hands, his eyes filled with warmth. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all to me. All I want is for you to be happy. To be yourself. I'm not asking you to change, Emma. I'm asking you to trust in us. Trust in what we have together. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink into her heart. For the first time, she truly understood what he meant. This wasn't about wealth or status, it was about the love they shared, a love that had no conditions, no expectations. It was just two people, accepting each other for who they were, flaws and all. She leaned in and kissed him softly, her heart full of gratitude. I trust you, Nathaniel, and I trust us. In that moment, everything felt right. They didn't need the grand gestures, the lavish parties, or the fame. All they needed was each other. And for the first time in her life, Emma felt completely at peace with who she was, and with the man she had chosen to spend her future with. As they pulled away from the kiss, Nathaniel looked at her with a soft smile. You know, he said, his voice playful, I've been thinking about something. Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What? She asked. Nathaniel grinned. How about we take a break from all of this, just the two of us, no cameras, no crowds. A quiet weekend getaway, just you and me, away from everything. No distractions, just us. Emma's heart swelled at the idea. A weekend away, just the two of them, sounded perfect. I'd love that, she said, her smile matching his. Nathaniel stood up and held out his hand to her, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Then it's settled. We leave tomorrow morning. Emma laughed, taking his hand and standing up with him. For the first time in a while, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, right beside Nathaniel, with nothing but love and adventure ahead. And as they walked inside to make their plans, Emma couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of their happily ever after. The next morning, as they packed their bags for their weekend getaway, Emma couldn't remember the last time she felt so excited about something so simple. It wasn't the luxurious destination or the promise of fancy resorts, it was the quiet, intimate time she would get to spend with Nathaniel, away from the chaos of their everyday lives. The car ride to the secluded cabin Nathaniel had booked was filled with light conversation, laughter, and moments of peaceful silence. They passed by rolling hills, thick forests, and quaint little towns that seemed untouched by time. It felt like they were driving into a different world, one where the noise of the city couldn't reach them, and where they could just be themselves. When they finally arrived, Emma's breath caught in her throat. The cabin was everything she could have imagined, cozy and rustic, surrounded by towering trees and a tranquil lake that mirrored the sky. The air was crisp and fresh, and the peacefulness of the place wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Nathaniel smiled as he got out of the car and walked over to her side. "What do you think?" he asked, his eyes sparkling. "It's perfect," Emma replied, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. This was exactly what they needed, time away from the world, just the two of them. They spent the first day hiking through the woods, hand in hand, taking in the beauty of their surroundings. They talked about everything: childhood memories, their hopes for the future, and even the things that scared them. It was the kind of conversation that only came when there were no distractions, when there was nothing but the person in front of you and the quiet hum of the world around you. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Nathaniel lit a fire in the fireplace, and they sat in front of it, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot cocoa. Emma had always imagined moments like this, but never thought they'd be real, sitting beside the man she loved, sharing simple moments of peace. "I'm really glad we did this," Emma said softly, her head resting on Nathaniel's shoulder. Nathaniel kissed the top of her head and smiled. "Me too," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "I think we both needed this time to just be, without any of the pressure. No cameras, no expectations. Just us." As the night went on, the conversation flowed easily between them, but soon, a comfortable silence settled in. The crackling of the fire was the only sound in the room, and Emma felt completely at ease. She had never known such peace before, and it made her realize something important: this was the life she wanted. Not the grand gestures or the extravagant events, but the quiet, meaningful moments with Nathaniel. The ones that showed her who he really was, beyond the suits, the titles, and the wealth. The next day, they woke up early to watch the sunrise together. They sat on the porch of the cabin, bundled in warm clothes, as the sky slowly lightened and the first rays of sunlight bathed the world in soft hues of pink and orange. Emma leaned into Nathaniel, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Nathaniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "You know, I used to come here when I needed to clear my head," he said. "When the world felt too overwhelming, when everything got too loud. This place, it helps me remember what really matters." Emma turned to look at him, her heart swelling with emotion. "I think I understand now," she said, her voice soft but certain. Nathaniel smiled at her, his gaze tender. "Good," he said, squeezing her hand. "I want you to know, Emma, that no matter where we go or what happens, I'm always going to be here for you. You're the most important part of my life." Emma's heart swelled with love as she looked at him. She had never felt more sure of anything in her life. This was where she was meant to be, with him, surrounded by love and the quiet peace they had found together. "I love you, Nathaniel," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "And I'm so grateful for everything you've given me. I never thought I'd find someone like you." Nathaniel leaned in and kissed her, gently and sweetly. "And I never thought I'd find someone like you either," he whispered. "But now that I have, I'm never letting you go." They sat there, side by side, watching the sun rise higher in the sky, knowing that this was only the beginning of the life they were going to build together, one filled with love, trust, and the kind of happiness they had both always dreamed of. As the weekend came to a close, Emma and Nathaniel packed their bags, both feeling a deep sense of peace that had been missing from their lives for a long time. The time away had given them more than just a break from the world, it had given them clarity, a chance to truly connect without distractions. As they drove back toward the city, the conversation shifted from the quiet moments they had shared to the future they were now building together. Emma had never felt so certain of what she wanted. It wasn't the life of luxury, the parties, or the crowds. It was Nathaniel, his love, his honesty, and the way he made her feel. She had always feared that the weight of his world might be too much for her, but now, she realized that as long as they were together, nothing else mattered. As they neared the city, Nathaniel turned to Emma with a soft smile. "I know it's been a whirlwind," he said, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "But I want you to know something, Emma. This isn't just a phase for me. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to marry you, not because of the titles or the money, but because of the person you are. I want to build a life with you, one that's ours, one where we can be ourselves, without any pretenses." Emma's heart swelled with emotion as she looked at him, her mind racing with thoughts of their future. "I want that too," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "I want a life with you no matter what that looks like. I've never felt so sure about anything. You've made me realize that love isn't about what we have, but who we are when we're together." Nathaniel reached over and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I couldn't agree more," he said, his smile brightening. "And I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you, no matter what. We're in this together." The rest of the drive was quiet, comfortable, and filled with a sense of mutual understanding. They knew that no matter what challenges they would face in the future, they would face them together. They were a team now, and nothing would break their bond. A few days later, Nathaniel took Emma to a small, intimate restaurant in the city, a place he had chosen specifically for them. It wasn't the kind of place where the rich and famous dined. It was a cozy spot with soft lighting, a warm ambience, and an atmosphere that felt just right. As they sat down at their table, Nathaniel looked at Emma with a twinkle in his eye. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" she asked, her heart beating a little faster. Nathaniel took a deep breath, his expression serious but filled with love. "Will you marry me, Emma? Will you spend the rest of your life with me, through all the highs and lows, the challenges and triumphs? I want you by my side, now and always." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she stared at him, feeling an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude. She had never imagined that her life would turn out this way, that she would find a man who saw her for who she truly was, who loved her despite all her imperfections. She had always believed that she wasn't enough, that her dreams were too big for the life she had come from. But Nathaniel had shown her that she was more than enough. She was everything. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Nathaniel, I'll marry you." Nathaniel's face lit up with joy as he reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you," he said, his voice filled with pure happiness. And in that moment, Emma realized that no matter where life took them, no matter how their journey unfolded, they had already found their happily ever after. Their love was built on honesty, trust, and the understanding that they were perfect for each other, just as they were. And as they left the restaurant hand in hand, their hearts full of love, Emma knew that this was just the beginning of the rest of their lives together.